Welcome to Sports Center with Elle Duncan and Kevin Negandhi. This is making me sad. We've got the very latest on Trae Young's injury ahead, and we're going to get you ready for the Stanley Cup Final. But first, it is win or go home in Phoenix.
Yeah, and a very big night for Chris Paul. He's been waiting for this his entire career,
Yes,
right?
he has.
How about this? The Suns can end the Clippers season,
Let's
a
go.
team that many thought Chris Paul would make it to the finals when he was in LA.
Right.
Different story. The Suns can be the first to clinch a spot the NBA Finals if they take Game 5. Entering the season, Phoenix hadn't had a winning season in 6 years. They hadn't been to the playoffs in a decade. They hadn't made it to the NBA Finals in 27 years. Now they're a win away from being the first team to ever reach the finals after a playoff drought of at least 10 years. For the Clippers, they've been here before. LA has 6 wins already this postseason when trailing in the series, tied for the most in a single playoff year all time, and they still have hopes of being the first ever to come back from an 0-2 hole 3 times in a single postseason. So Devin Booker, though, he had a 40-point triple-double in Game 1 of this series, but he has struggled since, of course, dealing with that mask and the nose issue. He's missed 13 of his 15 three-pointers since then. Chris Paul hasn't been much better since his return to the lineup, shooting 27% from the floor. Don't let that fool you, though, on what he brings when it comes to the calming presence with the young squad. If the Clippers want to stave off elimination, again, they're going to need a big one from Paul George, who is again without Kawhi Leonard. He is in LA rehabbing his knee injury. Sports Center with Stephen A. Smith is coming up. Top of the hour right here on ESPN. And Stephen A., with the chance to finally make it to the NBA Finals for the first time in his soon-to-be Hall of Fame career, what does tonight mean for Chris Paul?
Well, it's everything. I mean, you know, when you look at him and you think about what he's endured throughout his career and how close he has come, but simply no cigar. There's nothing more important than a night like tonight. 48 minutes away from a berth to the NBA Finals, your first time ever. You got best friends like Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James. Obviously, in Dwayne Wade and LeBron James' case, they're both champions multi-times over. And so you have to look at it from that perspective. Then you have to take into consideration how many times he's been knocking on the door. He was knocking on the door as a Los Angeles Clipper. They had a 3-2 lead in the Western Conference semifinals, but they blew it to the Houston Rockets with Harden riding the bench at that particular moment in time because Kevin McHale had pulled him and put guys like Dwight Howard up in there. Then you had a situation about 3 years ago with Houston. You go up 3-2 in Game 5, but that same Game 5, you suffered that hamstring pull. And as a result, you missed Game 6 and 7, and Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry were able to come back and capture the Western Conference Championship because CP3 was down in the eyes of a lot of people. Now here you are knocking on the door again. We all recognize the fact that this is a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the quintessential great point guards the game of basketball has ever seen, top 5 all time as far as I'm concerned. But to be this close at this stage and point in his career, particularly when so many people had counted him out and thought that his days were pretty much over, it's hard to put into words what a night like tonight will mean to him if he's finally able to get to the finals.
He's not the type of guy that will show his nerves, but I'm sure he'll be feeling it on the inside. More Stephen A. later in the show at the top of the hour for Sports Center as he is live from Phoenix. Stephen A., thank you. Elle?
All right, Kevin, developing story. We've seen injury after injury impact these NBA playoffs. We may have another. Trae Young's dealing with a bone bruise after twisting his right ankle last night. You just saw it there. It's questionable for Game 4 tomorrow night. Late in the third, he just unintentionally stepped back onto the foot of a ref. He'd leave the game, come back, score 35 points, but obviously was hampered by the injury in the Game 3 loss. And despite it coming in a losing effort, check out the company that Ice Trae joined just yesterday, recording his 8th 30-point game this postseason, tying LeBron James for the third most by a player participating in his first postseason. The only players that had more: Rick Barry, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. All of this to say they can't do anything without him. Here is his team talking about Trae.
Today is a day to take care of whatever it is that you need to get yourself ready for tomorrow. So that's where Trae is at. You know, he's getting what he needs, which is a little treatment and whatever else he needs, whether it's a massage or whatever, to get himself ready for tomorrow.
No, that's the head of our snake. So I mean, that's the last thing I feel like anybody who's a Hawks supporter wants to see is that dude coming down with any sort of knick-knack or that's the last thing I want to see. Hate to see it, and just hoping, praying that he's going to be okay.
I suppose it's ironically fitting that a franchise that's taken a huge step forward during this playoff run could be undone by a step back. NBA reporter Malika Andrews is with us now live from Atlanta. Malika, we're a little more than 24 hours away from Game 4. How will the Hawks determine Trae's availability?
Well, Elle, you can take a deep breath in through the nose, out through the mouth with me. Right now, the Hawks and Trae Young, that they're optimistic that he is going to be available to play in this pivotal Game 4. You mentioned the MRI revealed a bone bruise. Well, the thing about that, I've been told, is that means that this is a matter, because there was no structural damage, it's a matter of pain tolerance and treatment. So Trae Young, I've been told, has been getting a lot of different medical advice today, been seeking out that treatment. He said after Game 3, he wants to be available. He's going to do everything in his power to be available to play in this pivotal Game 4. As folks around Trae Young like to say, it would take half of a head for him not to be out there on the floor, and even then they would have to hold him back from not being out there, not going out there, not playing. The Bucks, I'm told, are preparing as if Trae Young is going to be available to play. He's such a focal point of what they do, and Giannis Antetokounmpo said that I'm wishing him a speedy recovery. They want the Hawks' best shot, but right now this is something that changes hour by hour, minute by minute with this type of injury, but indications are good that he's going to be available to play, Al.
I'm sure they want the Hawks at their best, just like they wanted the Nets at their best. But alas, that was not meant to be. Bucks are still going to look to take a 3-1 lead, whether Trae is playing or not tomorrow night. So what is their mindset as they head into Game 4?
One game at a time, Ellen. I know you can stop me. That's a sports cliche, but that's something that I've heard from the Bucks for the last couple of years that I've been around them. They're not going to get too high and they're not going to get too low. But the difference, as I talked to one staff member about today, is that in this year, in this season, they're actually able to embody that a little bit better. They've been in this situation before, Elle, where they were 2 games away from a playoff, from a finals berth, and they weren't able to make it. The Toronto Raptors stopped them. And so this time, when they fell down early in Game 3 to the Hawks, Giannis Antetokounmpo gathered his teammates and said, we're going to take this one possession at a time. And so when Giannis was asked after the last game about what making the finals would mean, he said, I don't want to talk about that yet. We still have 2 games to win, and they are utterly locked in on winning Game 4 and going back to Milwaukee with a 3-1 lead.
So is that all it took, was a pep talk? Because it sort of seemed like Chris Middleton actually fell through the Space Jam portal and became Michael Jordan last night, which was crazy. Malika Andrews, just an absolute phenomenal performance by Chris. Malika Andrews with the latest there as we head into game. Check in with Michael Wilbon. He's joining us now live from Phoenix. And Michael, I'm gonna ask you to be a prognosticator, okay? If the Clippers are going to survive elimination tonight, they're going to have to do what to extend this series?
Played as they did to the final seconds of Game 2, play the way that they did entirely in Game 3, the game that they won in this series, and play the way with the effort and energy they played the third quarter of Game 4. I mean, it's not like the Clippers are being tagged in this series. The Clippers could easily make the case if they wanted to, and it doesn't help them, that they've sort of outplayed the Suns on balance in this series. If you look, Game 1 was a 2-point game when Devin Booker dunked on an inbounds play to secure that victory. So it's not like they've been out of any game. They've been on top of the action in a lot of this, and they're going to need everybody in that ensemble to play the way they did in Games 2, except for the final 9/10 of a second, and Game 3, starting with Paul George, but making some free throws. They're little exceptions, little oh wait ifs and buts, and the Clippers are going to have to get around those and have that entire ensemble play well tonight.
Basically patchwork a bunch of performances together, right, into one final thing. I want to talk about the other series in the East because we do have the Bucks now up 2-1 in the series after last night, but more importantly, Trae Young, now dealing with a bone bruise in his right ankle after he stepped on a referee. He's questionable now for Game 4. I mean, Michael, I don't know. What chance do you give Atlanta if Young is less than 100%, which it looks like he will be?
Not much.
Okay.
I mean, he's their best player. He's their emotional leader. He is their drama. I mean, they seem to feed off of that. Those logo threes he hits. He had a couple last night. Look, Atlanta should have won last night's game. They were up in that game. I'm not going to say, Elle, that they were in control.
Sure.
But, they were on top in that game. Trae wasn't the same after that bone bruise, after suffering that you mentioned. And I don't know. I'm just not one of those people. While Milwaukee certainly is a team that could win this entire thing, could be the best team of the 4 remaining, I don't trust the Bucks. I just don't. I've seen too much, not just this year, but over the last couple of years. Maybe they've had enough heartache now that they can go and set aside some of these previous performances and especially take advantage, of Trae Young being less than 100%. We don't know how close he's going to be. But I got to see that. Milwaukee's got to show me at this point. I'm not going to presume. So Bobby Portis, who helped them win the first-round series and was terrific last night off the bench, and he might just go 3 or 4 games without playing, because that's the way they seem to roll there. I'm not going to say it's bad play, because it's not. I just don't understand so much of what Milwaukee's doing. And I don't necessarily trust them to use the formula they did last night when Giannis Antetokounmpo is dominating anywhere within 12 feet of the basket. He's the dominant force, and he's been that in the league for a couple of years. But I don't trust that he won't go out and shoot 10 threes as opposed to a couple last night. But Atlanta, no matter what Milwaukee does, needs Trae Young as close to full strength as possible.
It's because of everything else that he does, right? Even if he's not getting buckets, and we saw that in the closeout game with the Sixers, the ability to facilitate, just the threat of Trae is enough to keep defenses on their heels. We certainly hope he'll be able to play. Malika Andrews told us today it is a pain management issue at this point, so he'll see if he's available tomorrow night. Michael Wilbon, always available. We'll be back later on. Stephen A. Sports Center at 7 o'clock to talk more about the Western Conference Finals. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks,
Did you say Stephen A. Smith?
I did.
He's coming back for his thoughts on the future of Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers, with LA on the brink of elimination tonight in Phoenix. Also stand by for one of the brightest young stars in the WNBA set to join the show live. New York star Sabrina Ionescu updating us on her progress now that her first full professional season is